If the North Korean nuclear issue is regarded as a line, it has never been a straight line. Rather, it is a spiral, interwoven with repeated freezes and restarts, negotiations and breakdowns, sanctions and the countermeasures. Some people interpret nuclear weapons as military strength, but on the Korean Peninsula, it is more like a political structure. It drives alliances, reshapes regional security, and constantly tests the resilience of the UN sanctions system and global non-proliferation regime. In today's video, we will use public information to clarify three things: how the North Korean nuclear program has gradually developed to where it is today, why is it difficult for it to reverse, and what exactly has it changed at the levels of diplomacy, regional security, economy, and international order. The first key to understanding North Korea's nuclear weapons is the security dilemma. In a highly distrustful environment, the strengthening of either side's defense may be understood by the other side as an offensive preparation, and thus both sides are forced to increase their efforts. In this structure, nuclear weapons are often regarded as a deterrent tool that raises the risk to a level that the opponent cannot bear. It is not necessarily for winning the war, but more like to prevent the war from happening. This also explains a long-term reality. At many critical junctures, the nuclear program is not merely a technical issue, but is bound to sovereignty, regime survival, and national dignity by the North Korean narrative. When it is defined in this way, the space for diplomatic exchange is naturally compressed. In 1985, North Korea joined the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons (NPT) and is classified as a non-nuclear weapon state within the framework of international law. By 1992, the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement between North Korea and the IAEA had entered the implementation stage, that is, verification became institutionalized. However, in the early 1990s, the friction between North Korea and the IAEA escalated rapidly over issues such as declaration and verification authority. For the IAEA, verification is a necessary means to confirm that there is no move towards weaponization. For North Korea, verification is regarded as a security risk and sovereign pressure, the fear that transparency will become a vulnerable point. In 1994, the United States and North Korea reached the agreed framework. Its core logic is very clear: freeze the graphite slow reactor and related facilities in exchange for light water reactor arrangements and energy alternatives such as heavy oil, and promote the improvement of the relationship. This agreement once cooled the crisis, but it is highly dependent on mutual trust and continuous implementation. Once the understanding of compliance and verification differs, or the political wind direction changes, the agreement will become fragile. In January 2003, North Korea announced that it would no longer be bound by the NPT as a signatory. In its official report of that year, the INEA recorded that North Korea announced that it was no longer a signatory to the NPT as of January 11, 2003, and declared that it was no longer bound by its safeguards and surveillance arrangements with the IAEA. This move pushed the issue from a verifiable dispute to a more difficult reality to restrain, and also forced the starting point of the negotiation to be moved back. Subsequently, the six-party talks became a key multilateral platform. The joint statement of September 19, 2005, put forward goals such as the nuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and at the same time core issues such as normalization of relations, energy and economic cooperation, and peace mechanisms. But it is more like a list of principles, and the most difficult part is the implementation roadmap. How to arrange the sequence, how to conduct verification, how to withdraw sanctions, and how they provide guarantees. Each step affects the bottom line of all parties and also lays the groundwork for subsequent repeated tugs and pulls. In October 2006, North Korea conducted its first nuclear tests. The experiments were conducted again in May 2009, February 2013, January, and September 2016, and September 2017, a total of 6 times. The significance of nuclear test goes far beyond merely declaring possession. Beyond diplomatic language, it conveys a statement in the toughest way. Nuclear capabilities are moving from concept to real deterrence. It is precisely for this reason that negotiations after nuclear tests are often more difficult to return to the starting point, because the risks are higher for the outside world, and for North Korea, the sunk costs invested and political identity are heavier. After the first nuclear test, the Security Council adopted Resolution 1718, establishing a sanctions committee and implementing measures such as an arms embargo, asset freeze, and travel ban, which marked the beginning of the subsequent sanction system. In 2017, as the situation escalated, sanctions were further intensified. For instance, Resolution 2371 expanded partial bans, including a complete ban on several export categories, etc. Will Resolution 2375 strengthen restrictions in areas such as energy supply and exports, and included provisions on textile exports, etc. The United Nations has also released a summary list of facts, categorizing multiple rounds of resolution measure. This indicates that sanctions have formed a long-term system covering multiple dimensions, such as trade, finance, and shipping. However, sanctions are not a one-click solution. They can increase costs and compress space, but they may not directly change the other side's court judgment that nuclear weapons are a survival insurance. In June 2018, the Singapore meeting formed a joint statement. The US side proposed the direction of security guarantee, and the DPRK side reaffirmed its commitment to promoting the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Its symbolic significance is huge, but it also exposes structural problems. The text does not break down denuclearization into verifiable, measurable, and exchangeable steps. When details are lacking, negotiations are likely to get stuck on the most crucial point of disagreement. Should nuclear weapons be abandoned first, or should restrictions be loosened first? To what extent should it be verified to be considered reliable? How can the pace and scope of sanctions lifting be commensurate? So even if the window period is bright, it may quickly dim due to insufficient implementation mechanisms. If nuclear tests are regarded as proof of capability, then legal and constitutional actions are political declarations. In September 2022, North Korea released and promoted a new legal document on its nuclear forces policy, which was widely interpreted by the outside world as a more systematic elaboration on the mission, command and control, and usage conditions of nuclear forces. In September 2023, foreign media and research platforms quoted reports from North Korean official media. North Korea has incorporated its nuclear force development policy into a higher-level national basic framework through constitutional amendment. The meaning of this step is very realistic. When nuclear weapons are shaped into a national identity, negotiations are no longer merely about exchanging interests, but will touch upon the foundation of the other party's narrative, thus becoming more difficult to talk about and more difficult to retreat from. The advancement of North Korea's nuclear capabilities has directly driven the strengthening of security mechanisms in its surrounding areas. The 2023 Washington Declaration announced the establishment of a new nuclear consultation group, NCG, to enhance nuclear and strategic planning collaboration under extended deterrence. At the Camp David summit in August of the same year, the three countries issued a joint statement, emphasizing the institutionalization of trilateral cooperation mechanisms and crisis communication arrangements. Supporters believe that this is a necessary response to nuclear and missile threats. However, from the perspective of security dilemmas, this might also be seen by North Korea as an escalation of pressure, which in turn reinforces its argument that it must rely on nuclear deterrence. Regional risks do not only lie in the weapons themselves, but also in the misjudgment and escalation chain during times of crisis.
Sanctions rely not only on provisions, but also on enforcement and supervision. In March 2024, Russia vetoed the resolution to extend the authorization of the UN Sanctions Expert Group against North Korea. Several media outlets have pointed out that the expert group mechanism will be terminated upon the expiration of its authorization. which will weaken the ability to publicly investigate and regularly report on the enforcement of sanctions, circumvention methods, and illegal networks. This also reflects a greater reality. As the consensus rift within the Security Council widens, international actions on the North Korean nuclear issue become more difficult to maintain consistency, and this inconsistency itself will change the strategic calculations of all parties. Long-term sanctions combined with security confrontations mean that foreign trade, finance, and access to key materials are more restricted, and development space is compressed. This is a kind of long-term cost. But on the other hand, there is the lock-in effect. The greater the external pressure, the more inclined North Korea is to shape nuclear weapons as a legitimate source for resisting encirclement. The more institutionalized the nuclear status is, the more difficult it will be for the policy to go back. At the global level, the North Korean case has shaken the psychological expectations of the non-proliferation system when discussing North Korea's nuclear forces. Institutions such as SIPRI also emphasize that external estimates can often only be inferred based on the production of fissescent materials, test history, and observable delivery forces, and the uncertainty is very high. Even so, this case still reinforces a reality. When the security dilemma remains unresolved for a long time, nuclear weapons may be regarded by some countries as the last resort. And this is precisely the spillover that the non-proliferation regime is most concerned about. The reason why the North Korean nuclear issue is difficult to solve is that it is simultaneously a problem of security, trust, verification, and political identity. Perhaps, in the short term, complete denuclearization will be difficult to achieve all at once. But this doesn't mean that the world can only wait for a worse outcome. Maintaining communication channels, reducing the risk of misjudgment, and promoting restrictions and freezes within verifiable limits, these seemingly imperfect efforts may precisely prevent irreversible escalation at critical moments. In the nuclear age, the most dangerous thing is often not the loudest declaration, but a misjudgment, a loss of control, and a panic of thinking the other side is going to act first.